So today's topic is suffer no more. Now, what if I told you that suffering is optional?
Yes.
Some of us already know that, right? Yes. Well, that's what I want to talk to you about today. And I want to start with a story here. And this story is told in Joan Borisenko's book, Seven Paths to God. And so it goes that two monks were walking at sunrise along the banks of a stream, swollen by early spring rains. And as they rounded a bend, they spied a young woman standing in the middle of the stream, holding up her heavy skirt, which was dripping with icy water. She had lost her footing while trying to scramble from rock to rock, and frightened tears slid down her beautiful face. The older monk hitched up his robe, strode out into the stream, and scooped up the woman in his arms. Having carried her safely across, he deposited her gently on the other side of the bank. She thanked him with great relief, and the two monks resumed their journey. When the sun set and the monks were released from the vow of silence they kept during daylight hours, the young monk turned to his brother with fury, shaking his fist and shouting, "How could you have picked up that woman? You know we have vowed never even to look at a woman, let alone touch a woman. You have broken your vows, sullied your honor, and offended God." Because these are monks, they've taken this vow. The older monk smiled patiently at the younger man and replied, "My dearest brother, I put that woman down on the other bank 10 hours ago. You are the one who has been carrying her all day."
Wow. Yeah.
Suffering is optional. We get to have various experiences in life, but suffering, right, is really about how we look at those experiences, how we hold those experiences, what we do with those experiences. The older monk responded in the spirit of being a monk, which was to be loving and caring and compassionate. The younger, more inexperienced monk was having a strict interpretation of the law of it all and missed the whole point. So for 10 hours, he's suffering needlessly. I've had some experiences like this in my life. How many of you have had some experiences where you suffered needlessly because of how you held things, how you looked at things, how you perceived things? With me, I don't know about you, but with me, life, and maybe it's my own intention to live in harmony, maybe it's my own intention to live in peace, maybe it's my own intention not to suffer, that doesn't allow anything that would cause suffering to last very long in my life. I kind of get jolted back. And I'm fortunate enough, I guess, that I'm conscious to know that I'm being jolted back. And one of those experiences some years ago, I came out of a relationship. And I had some anger about it, and some unforgiveness about it, and some resentment about some things in the relationship that I felt very self-righteous in holding on to. I felt, well, I'm right. You know, being right can be a very dangerous thing. Because you can justify a lot when you're right. I was right. So of course I was angry, and of course I was resentful, and of course I wasn't forgiving her. And I carried this on, and it wasn't a, every minute kind of thing, but when I thought of her, I would go back there and I would be in that space. And, stayed in my self-righteousness. And eventually I started dating another woman. And I tell you, the drama that ensued was quite amazing. Until it was more than amazing. Until it was ridiculous. The drama was just ridiculous, and it was spiraling and spiraling and spiraling. And so finally, I won't even give you the details because it's just too much drama. But finally, at one pinnacle of the drama, I said, okay, I get it. And I immediately went home and wrote the forgiveness letter to the woman in the previous relationship. And I got it. Like, if you're going to stay in that space of inharmony, consciously choosing to be in disharmony, this is what you're going to create in your life. This is the suffering you are going to create for yourself. And so it's like, come back to center, come back to harmony, come back to love. Suffering is optional. We all get to experience some pain in our lives, right? We all get to experience some challenges. We all get to experience things that are uncomfortable. But the suffering part is optional. Because the suffering part really involves, what do we do with all of this? The Buddhists talk about mental afflictions. And basically, by dealing with these mental afflictions, we alleviate suffering. And myself described, when I look at what are the mental, I was contemplating this in preparing my talk, what are some of the mental afflictions that we encounter? Some of those are like comparison, comparing ourselves to others. How many of you have suffered from comparing yourself to others? Unrealistic ideas of what, who, how we're supposed to be. How many of us have suffered by comparing ourselves or holding ourselves to an unrealistic idea of how we're supposed to be? Judgment and self-criticism. As we traverse, as we get into our 40s, as we get into our 50s, as we get into various ages, we have certain ideas sometimes about what we are supposed to have accomplished by then and where we are supposed to be in life by that time. How many of us have suffered because of just an idea? It doesn't really mean anything. But it's an idea that we can hold in our mind that will cause suffering. Just an idea. Which means if we just change that idea, we alleviate the suffering. The moment we say, I accept right where I am right now. I make peace with my life just as it is. My life is perfect in every detail as it is right now. The interesting part is that that's absolutely true. And it's only our judgment that would have us believe otherwise. If we hold to that truth and recognize that truth, that our life is absolutely perfect just as it is right now, then we catch the miracle that's trying to happen for us. See, the judgment will keep us from the miracle. Because the judgment will have us say something is wrong and it shouldn't be this way. The miracle will come about when we realize that life, the thing we really want in life, is trying to come into our life. And every time we judge and say, no, it shouldn't be this way, it shouldn't happen this way, and it ought to happen this way, we block the good, and we block the miracle. But the moment that we begin to say all is perfect just as it is right now, we align with the perfection of God. The perfection that is ever unfolding in our lives. Let's try this on together. I'm going to invite you to join me in saying, all is perfect in my life right now.
All is perfect in my life right now.
Okay, let's try that again without the hesitation. There was a little hesitation, right? I don't know what that was. But
waiting for you.
you were waiting for me to say, oh, okay. All right, I just want to make sure. Let's try that again.
All is perfect in my life right now.
Yes, that is true. Ernest Holmes, the founder of Science of Mind, said that the world has learned enough from pain and suffering. And we don't, sometimes that old idea that, well, you have to suffer and you have to be in pain because that's the way you learn. It's just another idea that we've become accustomed to. That I have to learn through suffering. I have to learn through pain. And I love this teaching that we have because at some point I said, I'm kind of done with that. I agree with Ernest Holmes. I'm kind of done with that. How many of you need the 2x4 in order to make any changes in your life? Like the cosmic 2x4. You need to get hit over the head by the cosmic 2x4. You are not changing a thing until that cosmic 2x4 hits you. I decided, no, that's okay. I don't need that. Now, every once in a while, I get a cosmic, it's less than a 2x4, but it's still more than what I choose to have. Yeah. I'm not even going to give you some of the other examples in my life, but I've had a few of them, where I just, decide, as I did in that relationship situation, decide to stay in a funky place. But Ernest Holmes, the teacher of Science of Mind, taught us that trained thought is more powerful than untrained thought. Anyone ever hear that? Trained thought is more powerful than untrained thought. What that means is when you embark on a conscious spiritual journey where you are recognizing that you have dominion in your life and that you can manifest the life that you want, there comes responsibility with that. Because you start to accept the power of your word, the power of your thoughts, the power of your intention, the power of what you align with. Your thought is now being trained. Your thought is now conscious. You are now conscious of your relationship with the divine laws of the universe. Being conscious has responsibility. When you're unconscious, I feel, this is just me now speaking, I feel when you're kind of unconscious, you kind of get a slight little bit of slack. Not total slack, because you still end up manifesting things you don't want anyway, but you get a slight bit more slack. Divine grace kind of slides in there and says, we better take care of this one. But when you're conscious and now, because if this were not true, right? If you're conscious and if it were not true that you are now powerfully manifesting, then how could you manifest the things that you want? So now that you are powerfully manifesting, you have a responsibility to choose wisely where you're going to place your attention, what you're going to align with, what's going to be your vibration. Now, we don't have to get superstitious about it. Sometimes in Science of Mind circles and New Thought circles, we can get superstitious, right? Like you say one little word and they go, oh, no. It's not like that. Because if it is, someone let me know if it is like that. If that really is true, that boy, just that one little word, man, it's going to get you. If that's true, someone stop me after service and let me know how that works. Because here's what I'm going to do. If that's really true, here's what I'm going to do. And you got to let me in on the secret, because I'm going to use it if it's true. If it's true, then I'm going to get right in my car before I even start my car up. And I'm going to go, I am a billionaire. And then I'm going to go home and be sure that there's at least $1 billion in my bank account. Right? If it's really true that, man, one little word, boom, then that's what I'm going to do. But of course, it's not true. So we don't have to get superstitious about it. And we don't have to get fearful about it. Oh my God, I'm scared to say anything or do anything or say the wrong thing. We have to realize that the predominant place that we live in consciousness and in our vibration and what we align with is creating our life. Not the one little word or the one little thing, but where we predominantly live. In that relationship situation, I was predominantly choosing to live in a funk, in resentment, in anger. I was giving a lot of energy to it. That had to create something. And it had to create something of like kind, unfortunately. And so what it created was a whole bunch of drama and suffering. But we don't have to suffer anymore. When those things come up in our lives that are uncomfortable, what we call challenges, what we call painful situations, we also do not have to deny what we're feeling. Of course we feel things. It's not the feeling of pain or discomfort or challenge that causes the suffering. It's what we do with it. We can very well say, wow, I'm really feeling a lot of pain right now. And then at the same time know at some part of our being, something good is coming forward here. And where does the pain come from? The pain comes from something unhealed in our past. It's not God ordained. It's not automatic. Why does, in a given situation, one person experience a lot of pain and another person not experience a lot of pain? Because in that situation, that one person with the pain, some unhealed part of them is being triggered, which ultimately is an opportunity to be free. Right? If you can heal something from your past, it's an opportunity to be free. It's not a bad thing. I remember in a ministerial class many years ago, I was in ministerial school, and a woman who is a good friend, actually, but she said something to me that at the moment felt really unkind. And I was really out of sorts, and I went home. But then I quickly came to the awareness that this was about me and not about her. Because who was the one that was really triggered? Me, right? So that night I said, wow, what is this trigger? And I dug deep, peeled back the layers of the onion, dug deep into myself, and I uncovered some unhealed wound from my past. And I pretty much healed it simply by the light of my awareness because I was not aware it was even there. It's like, wow, I didn't even know that still was there, operating beneath the surface and therefore limiting my freedom. And I brought love into the space, forgiveness into the space, light into the space. So that by the time I woke up the next morning, I was feeling really good. And I was grateful that the woman had said this to me. When I went back to class the next day, and she said, I am so sorry. She said, that was really unkind what I said to you. And I said, no, thank you. Because that is exactly what I needed for you to say. I didn't know it and you didn't know it, but it's exactly what I needed you to say. Everything unfolding in our lives right now is unfolding perfectly. So perfectly. People saying to us things, they don't even know why they're saying them to us. They've never said that to anyone before. Like this woman, she was like, that's not me. I don't know why I said that to you. It's like, well, I do. Because you brought a healing about for me. But when we judge what's happening, we block the miracle. We block the good. And we create suffering for ourselves. As Ernest Holmes said, the world has learned enough through pain and suffering. So now we get to heal wherever we need to heal and be free. I always go back to, and I've shared this many times, probably shared it here before, I always go back to my 10-day silent meditation retreat through the Buddhist Vipassana organization, and how for 4 days straight, because we were to sit on the floor and maintain the same position for 1 hour at a time and do that 3 times a day, and I was not very good at the time at sitting on the floor still for an hour at a time. I could do maybe a half hour. And then my body started to say, I want to move, I want to change positions. My legs literally would go into excruciating pain. My legs would begin to spasm and go into excruciating pain. And I remember my breakthrough on day 4 when I was absolutely upset with the Buddhists and upset with the organization. I said, it's true, these Buddhists are just all about suffering. Because prior to that, I would always defend the Buddhists when people would say the Buddhists are about suffering. I go, no, you don't understand the Buddhists at all. The Buddhists are about the alleviation of suffering. And in that day 4 of the 10 days, I said, it is true, they are about suffering. And I had evidence because I went up to the teacher. As you were in silence, but you could go up to the teacher and you could bow down and you could ask a question of the teacher. And I asked the teacher, I said, you know this thing about being still and not changing positions, if I am in excruciating pain, should I still maintain a position? And he just very calmly, without any reaction, said, if you can.
If you can.
And I went back to my room and I was so not happy. However, day 4 was the breakthrough day. Because day 4 was the day that I recognized that it's not about the pain I'm in, it's about how I'm looking at the pain. For one, I think it shouldn't be there. For 2, the reason I was able to get to day 4 is I thought that it'll go away after I get used to it. You know, after a couple days, I'll get used to this and all will be fine. Well, it was day 4 and it was still there. So I had a false idea about what was supposed to happen. What else was I doing there? I was resisting the pain as opposed to feeling the pain. And then I was looking out into the future because it was 1 hour and I was like, okay, when is this hour going to be done? When is this hour going to be done? So when I got rid of the resistance, when I embraced that this might not change, like this might not change. It might be 10 days and the pain will be there. The suffering went away. The pain was still there, but the suffering went away because the suffering is a mental construct. It's not a physical construct. So I was in excruciating pain and literally, with the detachment that I got to, I actually had a smile on my face. And I was like, wow, how interesting. I'm in excruciating pain right now. This is really fascinating. Wow, look what it feels like to be in excruciating pain. Look at my legs, and they're spasming, and I'm starting to bounce a little bit on the floor. You know? This is really fascinating. But it really brought home that suffering is optional. It really brought that home. M. Scott Peck, in his book of many years ago, The Road Less Traveled, which I realized, I think I had that book for 5 or 10 years before I read it. And then when I went back, I realized why. Does anyone remember what the very first line in that book is? Well, I do. The very first line in that book is, life is difficult. So I think I read that line and I was like, okay, I'll get to that spot. I already know that. I was looking to learn something here. I already know that. But he goes on to say, in the same paragraph, it's not like he gets to the end of the book and then tells you, in the same paragraph, he says, life is difficult, But then it goes on in that same paragraph to say that once you understand that life is difficult, then life isn't really so difficult anymore. Because you don't have an unrealistic expectation that everything's going to be just easy and just go your way and everything's going to be exactly the way you think it ought to be and exactly when you think it ought to be and how and all this sort of thing. You recognize that in life, there will be things that come up. And then life's not really difficult anymore because you accept life as it is, as opposed to how you think, how I think it ought to be. All right. So I want to end by just coming back to what we're doing in Science of Mind with all this. Because what we're doing in Science of Mind is like we're not figuring things out. What we're really doing is we're just saying to ourselves, we're shifting our consciousness and shifting our way of thinking, right? We're reprogramming ourselves to know the perfection of all that is happening in our lives. That all is always in perfect divine order. And good is truly the nature of our lives, regardless of how it appears. That goodness is unfolding for us. We're adjusting our thinking. The slogan for our organization used to be, change your thinking, change your life. It could be, change your thinking, alleviate suffering. You can look at that situation differently. Let me ask the question for you, within yourself, how could you look at whatever situation, if there is a situation for you right now that's challenging you, and that that's causing suffering for you, how could you look at it differently and have a different experience out of it?